Tonight in the Honky Tonk Time Machine, we get to complete the trifecta. We've already spoken with Larry Stewart from Restless Heart, Tim Rushlow from Little Texas, the guys that make up 2/3 of the frontmen of country, and now Richie McDonald from Lonestar joins us. Richie, I'm really glad we're able to work this out. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
How much fun has it been joining forces with those other two guys and doing this frontman thing?
You know, just getting back on stage and playing all these number one songs that are really part of people's lives over the past, you know, however many years, you know, from Restless Heart to Little Texas to Lonestar. So we have a great time on stage. We have a fun time. We try to get the audience involved in what we're doing, and they're kind of an intimate show, you know, and you might hear a story behind the song that you might not know why we recorded certain song, or why Little Texas recorded a certain song, or why, you know, Restless Heart recorded a certain song.
And talking to Larry and Tim, they kind of led me to believe that the whole frontman thing was your idea to start with.
I guess back in 2007, when I had, you know, decided to leave Lonestar for the first time, Larry and I were doing a show down in Baton Rouge for a radio station, doing a benefit concert, and we were waiting to go on stage, and I said, "Hey, Larry," I said, "I got an idea, doing a trio, you and me and, you know, whoever else we can find." And then Tim Rushlow just happened to be a perfect fit, and I said, and we call it the Frontmen, because we were all frontmen of three very successful bands. And so which started, you know, we started doing tours overseas for the Navy right away, and we did quite a few of those, and we just saw the reaction, and we thought, man, we could, you know, do some more of these shows if we wanted to. And then you know, fast forward, I guess, you know, 10, 13, 14 years later, you know, when COVID hit, we just kind of decided to, you know, dive in, you know, head first and do this thing full time. And and that's what we're doing. We're having a blast doing it, and just enjoy getting out there and singing these songs, you know, from our respective groups, and singing harmony with one another. So it's a lot of fun.
It seemed like early on, especially, you guys really focused on the military and putting on shows for them. Why was that important to you, to be able to kind of give back to our men and women in the armed forces?
Well, I think, you know, once we started doing it and going over there and just seeing, you know, how these men and women that were, you know, thousands and thousands of miles away from their families, how our music really brought them closer and made them, you know, it kind of brought them a little, you know, piece of home to them. And we just saw the reaction. We saw young men and women just crying when they, you know, when we would sing "I'm Already There," or God Bless Texas," or you know, "What Might Have Been," or "I'll Still Be Loving You." And you could see what the music meant to them. And so we were honored to do it. We felt like that we were making a difference in their lives. It was very important.
Richie McDonald, the former lead singer of Lonestar, now with the frontman of country. You talked about singing all these songs from all three of these bands, and you get to sing background on some of the Restless Heart songs or some of the Little Texas songs. So I got to ask you, what's your favorite, Restless Heart song to sing on?
Well, without a doubt, I mean, there's a bunch of them, because I always tease Larry in the show. I always say, "Man, I grew up listening to your song," and I always do it on "The Bluest Eyes in Texas," because, and it's kind of a joke, but, you know, Restless Heart, you know, they obviously started, you know, they got their start before Little Texas and Lonestar, and just one of those bands that kind of, you know, paved the way for bands like us. And but, you know, being from Texas, and Tim as well, Tim can relate to this. You know, we were in bar bands back in the day, and that's where we got our start. And we were playing top 40 country music, and a lot of that top 40 country music back then was Restless Heart. And I always tell them, you know, I grew up listening to music, and if I had a dime for every time that I played, you know, Bluest Eyes in Texas back then, I'd be a rich man. But that's probably my favorite. We've got some other ones, you know, "I'll Still Be Loving You" and "Wrong or Right." Just, but that's probably my favorite, Restless Heart. And then my favorite Little Texas song to sing along with has to be "What Might Have Been," because that was mine and my wife's song back then. I had moved to Nashville, and we were apart for about a year, and that song was out. And although Tim talks about this in the show, he said people have that why, you know, where you could have went one way or the other. Well, it actually worked out for Lori and I, but that was our song while we were apart, so it has a special meaning to me.
The three bands, that's what's great about you three getting together is that, Restless Heart kind of represents that 80s decade, where Little Texas, 90s, Lonestar, 90s, and into the 2000s. So you really do have 3 decades covered there.
Yeah, and and I was thinking about, Tim and Larry represented the mullet very well, too, back then.
Yes, they did. You never sported the mullet, did you?
Not during the record deal. I think when I was when Lone Star first started out, we had Texas C. I was borderline. It was probably touching the collar. But yeah, it didn't get down there too far to be a full-fledged mullet.
It stayed business in the front, but never got the party in the back.
Exactly.
When I asked Larry and Tim the same question about favorite songs of Lone Star to sing on, they both said, I'm already there. And they said it was because of the story that you tell during the show of writing it. They didn't get into the details too much of that story, so I figured I'd ask you and how you came to write that one.
It is it's very close to my heart just because, Red is 25. Actually, Red just turned 26. So when he was 4 years old, 22 years ago, we were in a hotel room in Southern California, and I called home one night and been gone for like 6 weeks. And right before I hung up the phone with Lori and Rhett, and that squeaky little 4-year-old voice, he goes, "Daddy," he goes, "when you coming home?" And, man, it just hit me so hard that, I hung up the phone and I was crying, and I just thought, physically I'm not there, but mentally I'm already there. And I thought that, and as I thought it, I thought, man, that sounds like a good country song. And I started working on it, and Rhett had a little imaginary friend that used to be on the playground called the Captain, and then he had an imaginary friend that was in the house called Anne Marie. And so that's how that line got into the song. I'm whispering, "I'm your imaginary friend." Wow. And that's where it came from, and just a song that came out of a personal situation with my family has gone on. Like I said, like when we were doing the Navy tours, just to see the tears in these men and women's eyes, to see what that song meant to them, and knew that they had loved ones that they felt the same way about, that back somewhere in the U.S.
Richie, I want to get a little more background on you. I understand that you were born in Lubbock, Texas. Is that right?
Well, I was actually born in Dallas, but I was raised in Lubbock, because I moved there at such an early age. So I always just say I'm from Lubbock. Just kind of simplifies things a little bit. But yeah, Lubbock, Texas is kind of where I was. That's where I spent most of my life.
I would imagine a rich musical influence just around those parts growing up.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Buddy Holly, Mac Davis, Waylon Jennings is, down, from outside Lubbock a little ways. And it was just a great place to be, and especially growing up as a kid and just being introduced to really country music at an early age, just from a radio station there in Lubbock, KLLL. And it just, kind of went from loving music to junior high, to playing the guitar, to playing in talent shows, to high school, to singing in choir and playing in talent shows. And it would just seem like that, from an early age, I was headed in that direction.
How did you meet up with the rest of the Lone Star guys? Did that happen when you got to Nashville, or did it happen before that?
Well, actually, it happened probably in 1991. I was living in Dallas, Texas, working for Coca-Cola, and Opryland USA was having auditions for the theme park there in Arlington, Texas. So I went out to do an audition to try to, I wanted to be in Nashville, just trying to make my way there, just trying to figure out how to get there, and thought that would have been a good vehicle through Opryland back when they had the theme park. And so there I was, waiting my turn to go sing and dance on stage, and I was using the restroom, and Dean Sams was in there, and he'd already been a part of the cast a couple of years prior, but he had left, but he had to re-audition. And we were talking, we exchanged numbers, and long story short, Dean basically, he got one of the parts that day. I didn't, and I continued working at Coca-Cola, And then it wasn't long after that I thought, you know what, I'm just going to, take a leap of faith. And, I gave my notice at Coca-Cola and moved to Nashville. And Lori and I were out at Opryland USA one day, and we saw Dean up there dancing on stage. And after they got through, went up and reintroduced myself. I said, hey, remember I met you in Arlington at the auditions. And anyway, we just exchanged numbers, and wasn't long after that, I was working at the Tennessee Farmers Co-op, and I got a phone call from Dean one night, and he said he was going to start a band. And John Rich had worked at Opryland with Dean as well.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Britt was working at Pizza Hut at the time, and Dean was just trying to piece this band together, Lonestar, which was Texas C at the time when we put it together. Dean had gone into Pizza Hut looking for Michael Britt, found him in there delivering pizzas. And then we went through several drummers before Keith Rainwater came on board. He came from Texas as well. So we were all from Texas, but really didn't meet until we got to Nashville, other than Dean and myself. We all played in different, regional bands around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And Keith and Michael had played in a band called Canyon, which they had some national success. But, yeah, that's kind of where it started back in, early 90s.
It's kind of interesting to see kind of how the pieces all fell in place. And then when the band does get together, that first single comes out in 1995, Tequila Talkin'.
It was just a tequila talking.
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah.
Man, a great start for you guys. You guys are kind of off and running after that one, huh?
Yeah, it really was a great start. We'd been up and down the road, U.S., Canada, playing, bars and dive bars, just anywhere we could play to pay the bills, really, and, just kind of hone our skills. And we were playing the Wild Horse Saloon, probably twice a month at the time, and it was good for us because a lot of the industry would come out and look at bands that were playing their artists, and we had some interest from RCA BNA Records, and they started coming out and watching the band, and kind of where it all started.
Tequila Talkin', the first single, but the first number one was the follow-up, No News, and that's how my memories of Lonestar began. My first memory of you guys was No News. It was one of my favorite songs back in 1996. It feel pretty good to get that first number one hit with that one?
Oh, absolutely. As young musicians and young artists, and you're listening to the radio and you hear all these songs, and then you start hearing how big a deal that number ones are for artists and not easy to come by. So we were really proud of that moment, and we didn't take it for granted. And but No News was really, like you said, it was just kind of for the times it was a unique song, I think, even for us to do, but just the rapid fire lyric, and still a fan favorite to this day.
Those two come off of that debut album, Lonestar. Your second album, Crazy Nights, you come with the lead single, Come Crying to Me, which to this day is probably still my favorite Lonestar song. I think you guys sound so awesome on that, you in particular. And I just love what the song's about, Come Crying to Me. What do you remember about that, Richie?
Well, I remember John Rich bringing it in after he had, they wrote it one day, and we were looking for songs, and he brought it in and he played it for us, and we said, man, that's a great song. And then, we look forward to cutting it, and then just watching it climb the charts. And, it really lent itself to the Lonestar harmonies, especially.
I just was kind of going back and listening to some Lonestar last night, preparing for this interview, and I came across a video of you and John reuniting at his place out in Nashville. It might have been at a CMA Fest or something like that, and you guys were singing it together. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that may have been one of his birthday parties.
Okay.
I'm thinking it was, but yeah. I remember that night we got on stage, and, John, a lot of people don't know the whole story about John leaving the band, but it was I think it was about right after Crazy Nights when the label asked us to basically, we were kind of doing the Brooks and Dunn thing. We had two lead singers, me and John Rich, and the label really wanted us to kind of focus more on one lead singer and just kind of get a focus on, one sound. And so it just ended up being the label wanted me to be the voice of Lonestar, and John just didn't want to sit back and play the bass, and just sit back in the wings and just sing background. He wanted to be an artist, and deservingly so. So it was right after Crazy Nights, I believe, is when he left and went on to own half of Nashville.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, things turned out pretty well for him. He went on and did his Big and Rich thing, and I think it worked out for both sides, didn't it?
Well, it did, and John brought so many great songs to the table, and he was such a great entertainer. Just watching him on stage, he just really knew how to handle a crowd back then, and he still does to this day. I mean, watching him with Big and Rich, he's just a guy. He's one of the most talented guys I know in Nashville, from writing songs to producing to entrepreneurial, everything that he does. He's a smart young man.
John wrote Come Crying to Me, but you wrote Everything's Changed, which is another amazing song off of that Crazy Nights album. I loved it when I was a kid because I was 10 years old or so when that came out. But as I get older, each year that passes by, I start relating to it more and more, and it just really sticks with me.
Yeah, well, I think, that's a special song to me because as a songwriter, I wrote it with a couple of guys, Larry Boone and Paul Nelson, who were having really big success back in the 90s. And that was special to me because it was my very first number one as a songwriter. But that song a lot of people could relate to because it did talk about, the towns, the small towns that were changing, with corporate and whatever, putting up a plant where there used to be a parking lot, or a lot of people could relate to that song.
And then things are going pretty well for you at that point for the band, and then they go from going pretty well to just blowing up beyond probably your wildest dreams when Lonely Grill came out, and I think Amaze probably drove a lot of that success, right?
Oh, without a doubt. 1999. Never forget it, And the crazy thing is, this is another little bit of trivia that a lot of people don't know, but so, we really switched gears right after, I guess it was Crazy Nights into Lonely Grill. So we lost John Rich. We gained a new producer in Dan Huff, and he kind of had a vision, just sonically where this band should be going. And the songs that he was looking for, was Amazed, I believe, What About Now? Trying to think what else was.
Tell Her.
Tell
With Me.
Yeah, With Me, Tell Her. Lonely Grill, obviously. But I don't know. It was, we threw away the cowboy hats and just kind of were ourselves. We just said, all right, this is the music. This is what it sounds like. This is what we want to look like. And we never had, we had no idea that, we were sitting around listening to songs and song meetings, and we heard Amazed, and we heard I'll never forget Bill Luther singing that song, and just, man, it sounded like a hit with him singing it. And what I was going to tell you is that, so we came with a song, first single off the Lonely Girl album was a song called Saturday Night. And it was definitely a stretch, and it was a risk that, we took, the label took, and it was just Saturday. It was just a really different song for us to be putting out, but we were just going for it, And as we saw Saturday Night just kind of getting stuck in the charts and not doing anything, we thought, that's a mistake. And it was kind of like a mulligan in golf. So we took a mulligan on the single, we took Saturday Night off. We said, all right, okay, wait, we don't want to put this out. We want to put this out. And that's when they came back with Amazed.
Wow.
And the rest is history, 9-week number one, 10-week number one. That album, I think, went on to sell probably 4 million. That song, you're right, it blew up. It did a lot for us, and we got to travel the world a couple of times, play for presidents, be in a lot of weddings, and that was a huge song for Lonestar.
What a big move to kind of recognize that, okay, this isn't working, and then kind of switch gears and come with Amazed instead, especially being at a big transitional point in your careers? Because things are going pretty well before that. You know, it's not like you weren't having success. So to change into this kind of new mode and then have the wherewithal to then put out Amazed instead of Saturday Night, I mean, some smart decisions were being made.
Well, I think we got, we got lucky. A lot of times you don't get a second chance to say, hey, because there's so many artists and talented artists and that have great songs that, that take up spots, on the radio. We just got really lucky, and we were given a second chance to say, oh, okay, well, we're not going to play this one, but we will play that one.
It did start a streak of 5 straight number ones for you. Spent 8 weeks at the top of the chart. The next one I wanted to ask you about, though, was Walking in Memphis, the Mark Cohn cover. At that time, I didn't know who Mark Cohn was. I'm well-versed now, but back then, your version was the only version I'd known. What made you want to cover it?
Well, I mean, it's something that we did, and back in the Texas Sea days, it was just one of those songs that we did as a cover, just because, bar band, cover band, you're playing top 40 and cover music. And I think I was doing it at Soundcheck one day, and Joe Galani, our, RCA president at the time, I think he had heard us doing it at Soundcheck, and he goes, you know what? Y'all should re-record that. And that's when we did.
Did you feel like it was a bold choice to release it as a single? Or, I mean, at that point, I guess you had enough credibility under your belt to where you could do something like that, huh?
Yeah, and I think, try to make it our own. Mark Cohn had the best version of it because he wrote it, and but we kind of changed it up a little bit. Mark had a little push in there that I played it. I played the piano part back then, and I just couldn't sing and push it, at the same time. It was like walking and chewing bubble gum and whatever. But, the artists were known to re-record something at some point in their careers, and we just thought it would probably be a good cover to do. So we slapped a little steel guitar and fiddle on it and made it a country song.
That just makes everything better, doesn't it? And I tell you, one thing people should never overlook about Richie McDonald is your songwriting chops. You've had other artists record some of the songs you've written, too. I think you've written for, like, John Michael Montgomery, Clay Walker, Billy Dean, Let Them Be Little. I know Lonestar did that one as well. Sarah Evans. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people you've been able to work with that have picked up your songs.
Yeah, when I first came to town, that was really all I wanted to do. I just wanted to become a great songwriter, and start writing with all these great songwriters and, just getting better at it. And I don't know, that was always what I really wanted to do. I never had any intentions of getting in a band. It just that's what happened, and I'm glad it did. But I still, songwriting is still very important to me. I don't do as much of it as I used to, back in the day, but I need to do more of it. I just, I don't know. I think during COVID kind of changed things for a lot of people, and the music industry anyways. Nothing was happening. So I basically, I spent my time doing stuff around the house. My wife, we had talked about putting in a swimming pool forever, and so I took almost 5 months to put in a pool. I did it myself. When I should have been writing songs, I was out there in the backyard putting in a swimming pool. So, I enjoy doing stuff like that as well. I'm always doing something around the house, fixing stuff, building stuff, and but the truth is, songwriting gave me the opportunity to do that, and I'll never forget that. As you look back in your time with Lonestar, what do you kind of take out of it? What do you remember most or appreciate most about your run with the band? You know what? I just think about where we started and what all we achieved. The success that we had and the lives that we touched and the music. Hopefully, will we ever be members of the Country Music Hall of Fame or the Grand Ole Opry? I don't know, but we definitely. We made some fans out there, in the 28 years that we were together, and hopefully we'll be remembered by them as 4 or 5 guys that made a difference in their lives. Do you ever think you'll join back up with the guys? Is that still a possibility? Glenn, I can't. That's crazy talk, Glenn. Now, what are you thinking? I mean, no. You know what? I'm just kidding. You never know. I really love what we're doing right now. I love what I'm doing right now with Tim Rushlow and Larry Stewart. The front man is just something that we're just really trying to make this thing work, and I think it's very unique. It's a very unique band, with all the hits that we have. So I don't know. Right now, we're really focused on the front men and doing this, and who knows, maybe one of these days, before we get too old, we'll have Restless Heart, Lonestar, and Little Texas reunion.
There you go. We'll just leave the door open. How about that?
Yeah, we'll leave it open.
Richie McDonald, our guest, formerly of Lonestar, now doing his thing with the front men of country. And if you want to relive all these Lonestar, Little Texas, and Restless Heart songs, find a front men of country show near you. And Richie will be glad to see you when you come out, won't you, Richie?
Absolutely. We want everybody to come out. We really do. We're just, it's that time of the year. We've just kind of been home, just itching to get back on stage, and we're excited about this. You won't regret it. I mean, it'll be over before you know it, because all these songs are flying by you going, wow, I didn't know that was a number one. I didn't know that was a number one. I didn't know they sang that song. I didn't, it goes fast. It really does. But it's very entertaining.
Well, Richie, this has been great. One of the reasons I love my job is because I get to talk to folks like you. I can't thank you enough for coming on the Honky Tonk Time Machine, and I wish you good luck with the front men of country.
Well, Glenn, I thank you for all your time. You gave me way more than I deserved, but I really appreciate it.
I'll be honest. I take what I can get. So you stayed with me, so I kept talking. I'm sorry if I took too much of your time.
Oh no, are you kidding me? I know you said you're younger, and but I can tell that you've done your homework, and you know your history in country music for sure.
I'm flattered to hear you say that. Thanks again, Richie, for doing this, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Awesome. Absolutely.